Hello, everybody. Welcome into another YouTube live show here tonight. I am John Kurtz. Today, we have a lot to cover in the conference realignment world. I know everyone's hot and heavy with March Madness right now. Understandably so. Understandably so. I am very excited about watching the selection show, breaking down the brackets, all that stuff. We can certainly talk about some of it here. You guys know that's going to come down to you and how you exactly want to dictate the content here tonight. So certainly we can do some of that. But there has been a lot that has happened in the last week on the conference realignment front. And I missed talking to you guys about it because my week was so busy. I didn't have time to do a midweek live for you. So we're going to get caught up on all that. I will say that Twitter has been a very interesting place over the last week or so as far as this is concerned. We had me and Stuart Mandel going back and forth. We had the Utah AD getting those Twitter fingers out once again. Man, that guy really likes to pick and choose his spots on Twitter and honestly trying to do the work that George Kliavkov is not doing right now by being as silent as he is. It is leaving members to have to go speak out on their own. We've seen the athletic director at Arizona State speak publicly, and now we're seeing Mark Harlan, is that the guy's name, right? The athletic director at Utah having to go back to Twitter once again. So I see, Patrick says Harlan treated Dodd the same as you, John. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he used it as a way to try and make his point. Although with me, it was more he was getting a dig in at USC. It wasn't really a dig at me. This was definitely a dig at the Dennis Dodd article, which is the main subject of what we're going to discuss today, because there is a lot to break down in that thing. So it comes from CBS Sports. Dennis Dodd, who we've talked about quite a bit throughout this realignment process. He put out the article that had the Utah AD very upset and had, I think, a lot of people in Pac-12 country very upset. And frankly, I will even say I felt like this Dodd article bordered on being just too far with the narrative, and it definitely riled up those in Pac-12 country. I mean, that was the genesis for the back and forth between myself and Mandel. So a lot of people really took umbrage with the article that Dennis Dodd put out this week. So we'll break it down and everything that's in there. It's basically the same story that we've seen now 5 or 6 different times from all the major outlets, The Athletic, ESPN, CBS Sports, the LA Times even chimed in with basically the same narrative and the same story. But I would say that it was just taken to the nth degree. Is what Dodd did with this story. We have a new mailbag from John Wilner that we can get to with some reaction there. There's one thing that he really took issue with in the Dennis Dodd story, and that was the fact that 2 coaches were quoted, one of which was Jerome Tang, the other was Bill Self. And obviously when Bill Self speaks and he's speaking directly about wanting Arizona, which is what happened in that article, that's going to turn some heads. But I think there's some hypocrisy coming from the Pac-12 as far as that goes. Oh, we have I forgot about this, guys. We have a new public enemy number 1 for the Pac-12. It is not anybody I think any of us have heard of before. It is Karen. Karen is public enemy number 1 now for the Pac-12. And I do not mean Karen in the sense of the archetype that you think of, like a woman complaining. It is not that Karen, not the meme Karen. It is an actual female named Karen. And even though this has already been shot down by Bob Thompson, the former head of Fox Sports, the Pac-12 think they have their new target zeroed in on, and has been the subject of the latest John Canzano subscriber-only piece, by the way, as well. So watch out, Karen. You got to watch out, Karen. I said, speaking of that, R-Web, hopping in first for the first donation. I appreciate you, R-Web. Very timely. R-Web says, support Greg Flugar ripping the hashtag Big 12 Karen crowd a new one. P.S. Did you receive your payment? Behova. Well, Behova, man, first of all, I was at Sprint Center. I attended the K-State game as a fan. I had a credential on Friday and hung out and watched the semifinals there. I was able to do just a little bit of work. I did not actually see Brett Yormark, so I have nothing really to report there. But, man, he was out there in Kansas City. He got Shaq courtside, saw all that stuff. I'd say a pretty good weekend for Brett Yormark as far as that goes, even if Texas did win the tourney. But here's the thing. I did receive my payment, R-Web, from Karen. As you referenced there, Greg Flugar brought up the fact that, we're all clearly on the payroll from Karen at Endeavor, which is the enemy now of the Pac-12, orchestrating this whole thing. Endeavor and Karen, specifically Karen. Apparently, Karen has conned the entire sports media ecosystem into raging against the Pac-12. It convinced the best reporters in the game, Pete Thamel, Brett McMurphy, J. Brady McCullough at the LA Times, Dennis Dodd, Max Olson was involved in this from The Athletic as well, like that have all written this same story, right? The Sports Business Journal, John Oran, Andrew Marchand, they have all been conned. They have all been conned and taken in by one woman, and that is Karen. And she is the one signing my paychecks. You are correct, R. Webb. I get a massive paycheck from Karen every single week. And because of that, I am on a mission to single-handedly take down the Pac-12 because I do get that paycheck. So, the irony of the Pac-12 complaining about how the Big 12 is orchestrating some PR attack when you guys know there are others out there very clearly doing the same thing who are receiving paychecks. So anyway, we will try to get you all up to speed on that. But yes, Greg Flugar has been great. Big Ten guy, Minnesota guy, I believe, who has a very level-headed take on conference realignment, right? I literally was just looking at a tweet of his a second ago before I popped on here, where he basically, I'm just going to pull it up because I think we've kind of jumped the shark on a lot of the narratives here on both sides. And again, I even say that realizing that the Dennis Dodd's piece this week I would include in that. Well, now Greg's tweet is not pulling up for me. Anyway, at the risk of making you guys sit through much more searching for me, it was basically like, look, there are three different extreme takes here going on. One is that the Big 12 is going to completely topple the Pac-12 and the four corner schools are 100% going to leave. The other extreme is that the Pac-12's TV deal is going to be great and still be as good as the Big 12's. And the other is that, like, hey, nobody is dissatisfied at all in the Pac-12 and everything that's coming out is just total BS. It's clearly somewhere in between. The problem, as I have stated over and over again, and my frustration over and over again has been that there is no acknowledgement on the Pac-12 side of any of this, at least being a little bit real, at least there being something to that. The athletic director at Arizona State has now publicly said, quoted on the record, publicly said that it has been frustrating. So you know that there is some consternation and frustration out there. But as these things tend to go in society in 2023, we pull everything to the extreme examples. So if you're on the Big 12 side, it gets characterized as you think the Pac-12 is dissolving tomorrow. And if you're on the Pac-12 side, it is everything's perfectly fine and sunshine and rainbows and nothing's going wrong because the Utes are in the Rose Bowl, baby. We have those two extremes when the truth actually lies somewhere in between. So you guys know, I mean, it's another week of all of that. It's been another week of all of that playing out. There's a little bit of talk again about the ACC Pac-12 merger, which has emerged this week, which is all because of John Skipper opening his big mouth, the former head of ESPN, who's now with Meadowlark Media. John Skipper said, like, he thinks that the Pac-12 and the ACC should merge. And John Wilner, actually, of all people, and again, like I think Wilner has been the most level-headed of anybody with the Pac-12 propaganda machine. But Wilner laid out like why that wouldn't work, and there are some pretty obvious reasons why that wouldn't work. So that's kind of a primer of what's happened in the last week or so, I would say. Colorado had a Regents meeting, but I don't think anything really super important happened there. It was an update on, I believe, what the media situation is with the Pac-12. But I don't think there was anything real significant coming out of that. That just kind of fizzled. We didn't get any real public comment at the Pac-12 basketball tournament this week, which I think some felt like there might be. And hey, if you ask John Canzano, he said there would be resolution about the TV deal. Predicted that multiple times that would happen, which of course it did not. So take some of what you read from him with a grain of salt. Anyway, table is set. That's what we have coming up tonight. You guys know the drill. If you have been here before, you're seeing people donate already. That is the way to get your voice heard on the channel tonight. We have over 225 people in the chat right now. Way too much for me to keep up with. So if you want to make sure that you're getting on and I'm seeing what you say, you can click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to donate, and that will make sure that your question or comment makes it onto the show tonight. So it's a way that you can make your voice heard, dictate the content of the show, and support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content on a weekly basis here on this channel. Could not do it without you guys' support, and I very much appreciate those of you who do donate. If you are watching this after the fact, not live, you can support the channel on Venmo as well. It is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to do that. And if you can like the video, that is a totally free way to support the channel. It does not cost you a dime. All it takes is the effort of one click. If you could just like the video, that helps me as well. Helps with the algorithm comment on the video after the fact. Tell me you love me, tell me you hate me, whatever it might be, but the comments help as well. So any kind of engagement, I do appreciate. Michael, what's up, Michael? Michael says, love your work, John, paid for by Big 12 Karen. Yes, of course. Every message that comes through the channel here has been proofed by Karen. It is my mission. I am sent on an ordained mission from Karen above to tear down the walls of the Pac-12 and George Kliavkov, and I am a coming, baby. I am a coming. So thank you. Thank you, Michael, for acknowledging our overlord, Karen. Robert, what's up, Robert? Robert, I appreciate the support. Robert says the Big 12 will be inviting UC, I assume that's Cal, Arizona, and Fresno States. That is an interesting combo. That is an interesting combo. If we're talking about Cal, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I don't. What is the advantage of adding Cal at this point? If they're like a tag along with Stanford or something, I don't know. I don't think that will happen. If that's what you mean. Oh, UC, probably Colorado. I'm an idiot. My bad. I'm an idiot, Robert. I'm an idiot. I guess I just took an opportunity there to take a shot in at Cal. I'm sorry, Cal. You caught a stray. That was unnecessary. You guys just fired Mark Fox after he won like 3 basketball games this year, and I'm not even kidding. I think that's like literally what happened. Did not deserve that stray. So my apologies to those in Berkeley. Colorado, Arizona, and Fresno State. Look, the only person that's pushing anything regarding Fresno State is John Canzano, which to me, I will at least say, like, I guess game recognized game. I mean, we're being paid here by Karen, our overlord Karen, and Canzano with the Fresno State thing. I think it's like kind of taking a narrative and trying to run with it on the Pac-12 side that wouldn't be entirely true. I mean, they somewhere along the line, someone got this morsel, this nugget, like, oh, the Big 12 and Fresno State have talked. That's going to be a fit for the Big 12 later on, not the Pac-12. Of course, the Big 12 would take Fresno because, it fits in with the truck stop day, just all these idiots that don't have elite academics and all that. It's kind of the narrative there. It's not going to freaking happen. Fresno State is not going to the Big 12. That is not gonna happen. But Colorado and Arizona very much could happen. Very much could happen in the realm of possibility. I still would not predict it, and I think that is one of the misconceptions about all this and where everybody stands. Like, I still would not predict that Colorado and Arizona leave, but I do think there's a chance. 30-70, maybe something like that right now. But total stab in the dark. Total stab in the dark by me. David, what's up, David? Appreciate your support as always, David. Really do. I know that you are a regular here. David says, keep in mind, ground zero of the Pac-12 Big 12 war is here in Utah, where Ute fans love to call BYU fans Big 12 Karens. Okay, so I guess that's really where it's hot and heavy with the Karen stuff. Well, I mean, funny, it really is like that. I mean, the Pac-12 v Big 12 battle. Here's the thing that's been interesting, David, to your point about how this is all developed. It's basically Utah fans versus the Big 12. Like, there are not really ultra passionate fan bases in the Pac-12 in general. I don't see a lot of them. Every once in a while, when I see pushback to something from the Pac-12 side, it'll be like a Washington State or an Oregon State fan, which makes sense. And I have a lot of empathy for them because it sucks the position that they're in. But it is Utah fans like really leading the charge here. I understand that a lot of that is going to be fueled by the fact that they're not just fighting against the Big 12. They're not just fighting against, hey, we were in a group of 5 conference forever, and we finally jumped up. We're doing very well in this conference. We do not want it to implode. But at the same time, they're also going up against BYU, right? You had this fight for a long time to get to a conference. Utah does. BYU doesn't have it. You have this aura of superiority over your rival there. Obviously, it's not accurate because BYU is the bigger and more valuable brand. But Utah has that, and so you don't want to give an inch. You don't want to give an inch to BYU. So you have so many things at play there that are really stoking the fire. But it's Utah fans. I mean, literally, like every dumb thing I see on Twitter from the Pac-12 side, it comes from Utah fans. Like they're the ones really doing this. So yes, I was aware of some of that. I was not aware that it's predominantly being directed right now at BYU fans as Big 12 Karens. But David, as you know, being here, contributing to the channel, I'm sure you took marching orders from our overlord Karen as well, and took the money from her to donate into the channel tonight. So I appreciate you doing your work as a servant of great overlord Karen, David. So thank you for being here, and I'm sorry that you're taking so many shots there from good old Utah fans these days. Friendly Lukey Tube. What? Friendly Lukey Tube. All right, I like that. I like that. What's up, Friendly Lukey Tube? Friendly Lukey Tube says schools have to contact the Big 12, right? Isn't there clear evidence that Utah doesn't want into BYU's conference and would rather sink with the ship? Yeah, so technically, that is supposed to be the way that it works. Like in realignment, like the official thing would be that, yeah, the school contacted the conference. Um, but I think like the way all this, like we understand, like there would just be, well, we've seen it reported by The Athletic, including Stuart Mandel. His byline was on a piece that said the Big 12 had been talking to four corner schools. Like we've seen that put out there before. Whatever they have to do for the legality of it as to who contacted who will happen. But yes, you are correct. I believe that is technically the way that it's supposed to work. Isn't there clear evidence that Utah doesn't want into BYU's conference and would rather sink with the ship? Well, it certainly appears that way. I mean, look, Utah is outwardly with their athletic director on Twitter, like projecting those messages strongly. In fact, he said directly to me, I had that pulled earlier today, since he's now back on Twitter, the tweet that he had to me was when I had tweeted the Pac-12 had a standalone game on Friday night with huge playoff implications and their biggest brand that is soon leaving playing and was almost 3.5 million behind two non-OU Texas Big 12 teams. And his quote tweet was, "We are not leaving," which was twofold. I will admit that was a pretty good one because one, he's throwing out there like, yeah, we're not leaving the conference. And two, I said their biggest brand that is leaving soon was playing in reference to USC. And he is saying we're actually the biggest brand. Kind of a double entendre going on there, even though clearly they're not as big a brand as USC, or they would be off to the Big Ten now to go lose more Rose Bowls. But in fact, it is USC that is going instead. So yeah, there seems to be plenty of evidence for that. I think Utah is, I mean, it's been clear to me that they would be the last to jump here out of anybody. They would go kicking and screaming and like held at gunpoint, I think, to the Big 12. And I don't know if the Big 12 has a ton of interest. We'll see. I do think there is some value. I've kind of changed my stance on this a little bit after reading the comments of the now head of content at ESPN saying that really now it's much more about brands and rivalries than it is anything else. And so I think there would be a lot of value to having the Holy War as a property in your conference. So even though you already have the bigger brand in the state of Utah and the one national brand that's in the state of Utah, I think having the Holy War in the conference and like what we're talking about right now, all this Twitter back and forth, like that drives narrative, storylines, and interest. And I think that would have some value. But yeah, I think they would have to go absolutely kicking and screaming. And it's because of the dynamics at play there with the Utah BYU rivalry and the dynamics of Utah waiting so long to get their chance and being in a position now where they're in a league where they can do it. You know, I think it was Wilner, and I'll get to some of Wilner's latest mailbag here in a second. I think it was Wilner that said, like, the fact of the matter is for Utah, it's going to be easier to win the Pac-12 or get to the playoff from the Pac-12, even if you're not winning the league necessarily, but probably looking at like winning. I mean, they've been winning the league now with USC in it. No reason to think they wouldn't continue to be able to win the league with USC out of it. And that provides the easiest path to the playoff as opposed to going to the Big 12 and playing in a, frankly, tougher conference, more competition across the board, less rummies, less gimmies to be able to float your way to a conference championship game over the top of. And so it becomes more difficult for Utah in the Big 12 too. In addition to, you know, they want to fancy themselves. They want to fancy Salt Lake City as Berkeley as well. Or Palo Alto. You know, there are all those dynamics at play. I just jumped ahead. Runzy Rage 07. What's up, Runzy Rage 07? Runzy Rage 07. I appreciate the support. Thank you, my friend. He says, great times all around. Gundy finally gave a former walk-on a full scholarship in Cale Cavanis. I can't wait for the final bedlam. Go Pokes. All right, Oklahoma State fan checking in. I will just say I feel for you as an Oklahoma State fan right now because Oklahoma State got absolutely screwed by the selection committee not getting into the field today. I feel terrible for Mike Boynton. I mean, you've got the NCAA going after him twofold now, keeping him out of the tournament for the stupid NCAA ruling that happened, and then now keeping them just out of the field. I thought the Big 12 deserved a little bit more respect than it got overall from the committee. Oklahoma State is a definite part of that. Jerome Tang, actually, K-State's head coach, stood up for Oklahoma State on the show, like after the bracket had been revealed, when he went on and said, look, Nevada is one of the teams that got in at the end. K-State played Nevada early in the year. They then played Oklahoma State twice. And Jerome Tang said nothing against Nevada, but Oklahoma State was a much better team. Like they were a more difficult team to prepare for and play. So Oklahoma State, bad break there. So I hope football is going to fulfill whatever void is left by basketball not making the NCAA tournament there, Runzy Rage, because got totally screwed. Got totally screwed there. Final Bedlam will be great. No doubt about that. Final Bedlam will be great. And boy, will I be rooting for Oklahoma State in that. Would love for you guys to have eternal bragging rights over Oklahoma with that. And I know Oklahoma fans will say, look at the series. Yeah, I get it. But to have that last one sure is nice. Sure is nice. McMuffin, what's up, McMuffin? McMuffin says, I'm sure Florida State and Clemson would just love to give up more money to play biannual games in Oregon. Yeah, in reference there to the to the potential ACC Pac-12 merger being speculated about by John Skipper. Well, it's not just that. I mean, the real problem is this, and I'll hop into Wilner here real quick and start to get to some of the prepared material here. But he says, what do you make of former ESPN chairman John Skipper's comments that the ACC and Pac-12 should merge? Wilner says, anytime Skipper addresses college sports realignment or media matters, we listen, and the concept of a bicoastal merger has been discussed. The ACC's media deal runs into 2036, But he says, as we see it, there are two outcomes to a merger. One, the grant of rights remains in place as incoming Pac-12 schools commit to the partnership until 2036. Oof. Or two, the grant of rights is broken in order to force a shorter contract cycle and a renegotiation of the ACC's current deal. Both of these are problematic. Wilner says, we cannot see Oregon or Washington or Utah, for that matter, agreeing to a grant of rights deal into the mid-30s. And if the agreement is broken, the ACC might collapse. Clemson and Florida State are unhappy with the revenue situation and would assuredly seek membership in the SEC. So, yeah, your problems there are, one, if everybody's just grasping onto that grant of rights until 2036, no way that you're going to get Oregon and Washington to sign their lives away that long when they're still waiting on the Big Ten. And two, if it were going to break the grant of rights, then the ACC is going to implode anyway, because we've already seen Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State. All three of them now have had their athletic directors speak out about wanting unequal revenue sharing, being unhappy with how far behind they are of their peers in the SEC and the Big Ten. So I just don't think that would happen. Just do not think that there's any real scenario where that were to happen right now. Now, Wilner also went on to say, like, hey, maybe at some point this would make sense. Like the Pac-12, if you get through this, survive this round of realignment, maybe on down the line in a couple of years, it turns into a Power 4 instead of a Power 3, and everybody kind of stands pat. I mean, that's possible. I still think it's more likely that you get to a Power 3 and you'd have one conference be the last one, presumably, hopefully, the Big 12, standing as the best of the rest conference. But it is possible. It is possible that could happen. I just don't see it happening right now. Certainly don't see it happening right now. All right, let me start in. Let's get to the Dennis Dodd article here, okay? There's a lot to get to here. I gave you a teaser of it, but it starts off. This is one of those things that I know has been mentioned. Stuart Mandel mentioned it in his back and forth with me, that I get why there is some pushback to like the general tone of this article. So Dodd says, as Brett Yormark ducked into a waiting car service Tuesday night, it may have been the first time he was recognized outside the office in his still new job. Quote, that's the Big 12 commissioner, gushed a group standing on a street corner as if Paul McCartney had just walked by. In general, college commissioners aren't recognized on the street. At this rate, Yormark may graduate quickly to rock star status in this town. It may not stop with the entertainment aspect. Yormark continues to pursue the Pac-12's four corner schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. There have been weekly conversations between the Big 12 and those four programs as talks have heated up, one league insider tells CBS Sports. So that's a league insider. So that's someone from the Big 12 side saying that there are weekly conversations between the Big 12 and the four corner schools. Big 12 sources were waiting anxiously to hear the results of a Colorado Board of Regents meeting held to discuss the program's future in the Pac-12. The CU Regents met in a special session. It may only take one of the four corner schools to bolt from the Pac-12 for the other three to follow, Big 12 sources say. So to that point, we basically have the same story that we've seen before, with the only difference there being the word weekly in front of conversations between the Big 12 and the four corner schools. That was the only real new bit of information revealed there, that their weekly is just providing a little more specificity with the level of contact between the four corner schools and the Big 12. I think if anybody, and this is where I think I will say, if you're on the Pac-12, is totally fine. You know, if you're a Utah fan, basically, right? Like the Utah narrative, like everything is totally fine in the Pac-12. I think there's been enough smoke there that you would have to acknowledge. Maybe it is not Utah. I would understand if Utah really, you know, with Harlan out here being as defiant as he is on Twitter. I don't doubt that Utah could be completely abstaining from these conversations. But with as much smoke as we've seen, I think it is fairly obvious that there are at least 1 to 3 other parties out of the four corner schools having some level of contact with the Big 12 because it is just smart business to do so. I'm not even saying that that's what they want to do or that's their preferred destination. I think it's very clear that all 10 would prefer to stay and get a good deal in the Pac 12 and not have to deal with all this and the hassle of moving and everything. But that's the problem. You've already had the Arizona State athletic director go out and say, like, this has been really frustrating. We've had multiple reports saying, like, the deal is not coming together the way that they would have really liked to. They've already been jumped in line by the Big 12. So, like, there is the dichotomy in all of this. So, whether or not you believe that there are weekly conversations with all four, I think that's where, like, we don't have full details on who specifically is talking. I guess we do have a how often it's happening here, but we don't have the total, like, nitty gritty details on all of that. So, I think it leaves a lot of wiggle room there. When you're opening a story comparing Brett Yormark to Paul McCartney, it's going to be harder if I'm going to go to the other side, I think, for some people to take a lot of the information seriously in this article. And I know he's just making a point about a story here, and Brett Yormark clearly does have a lot of popularity within the Big 12. Shout out B. Izzo. You know, I mean, we like the guy a lot. But if you do that, it is combined with the information in the story and the environment that we're in right now with all of this. I think it lends itself towards being picked apart a little bit more. And I would actually say, like, understandably so. Here's one of the things that really seems to be bothering Pac-12 country. It says that to me. So he's quoting right now Bill Self. Bill Self says that to me is the one we have to get. Self said of Arizona. So Bill Self, he has Bill Self on the record commenting about wanting Arizona and saying that to me is the one we have to get, which of course Bill Self would think that. He's looking at it from a basketball standpoint, strengthening the league in hoops. Arizona would obviously make a world of sense as far as that goes. And then Jerome Tang, K-State head coach, is also quoted here. Said, quote, I've always thought that the Arizona schools, Colorado and Utah, are a natural fit for us. Who doesn't want to visit Arizona? Seldom, and this is commentary from Dodd, seldom has a conference taken on the personality of its commissioner without realizing it, yet loving the hell out of it. The Pac-12 has been mostly closed-mouthed since last summer when USC and UCLA announced they were leaving for the Big Ten. Stability is definitely something the Pac-12 can't claim at the moment. Cracks are showing. Yormark and the Big 12 are offering a safe haven. There feels like an inevitability to it all this week at the Big 12 tournament. That's another line that, like, I can kind of be like, all right, like, I understand how there's a frustration from the Pac-12 side with that. John Wilner, I'll pull up the specific line from him because it was in his mailbag, took issue with this. I bolded this one out. He said, even Big 12 coaches and athletic directors are speaking publicly about poaching the conference, an astounding turn of events compared to the manner college sports has operated in the past. Parentheses, it's not a good look for the industry. Not a good look at all. It is weird to see coaches quoted speaking about it, I will admit. But you know what else was weird and happened well before any Big 12 coaches or athletic directors publicly commented about anything? That was when George Kliavkov directly commented about the Big 12 and said, we haven't decided if we're going shopping there yet or not. That happened well before all of this. And that's the thing, like, I want to kind of scream at Wilner and all this. And I did tweet at him at one point when he complained already about the Big 12 coaches and ADs talking about this. The precedent was set by your guy. The precedent was set by your dude. Yormark did not specifically comment about the Pac-12 at all. He said we're open for business, which is just a very generalized statement. And there have been talk. Open for business could mean Fresno State, according to John Canzano, because Canzano says there have been conversations between the Big 12 and Fresno, and he keeps trying to push that garbage narrative. So if there are conversations between the Big 12 and Fresno, which are coming from your own propaganda machine, then theoretically the Big 12 would be open for business, right? Well, Georgie boy had his feelings hurt by that, and he directly commented about the Big 12 and tried to turn it back around in an attacking tone. So then you're going to kill Bill Self for just saying, like, yeah, it'd be great to have Arizona. Jerome Tang for saying, who doesn't want to visit Arizona? Come on, man. Come on. Yeah, like get out of here with that. This this has been a dirty war on both sides for a long time, and Kliavkov was the one that really set the precedent with publicly speaking on the other one. So that's what I would have to say about that. That is one thing. I'm bouncing back and forth here. I'm trying to bring some levity to this. I don't love everything in the Dodd article or the tone that it is written in. But get the hell out of here with trying to tell me that it's the Big 12 that really started fighting dirty with the athletic directors and coaches publicly commenting about things, man. Come on. Tone was set by George on that one. So the part that is probably the most salacious in this in terms of what's been attributed to a source, there's a subheader that says, will there be further realignment? 3 high-ranking industry sources in the last week told CBS Sports they believe Yormark is going to be successful in luring at least some combination of the 4 corner schools. Some went farther, speculating the Pac-12 was a couple weeks away from dissolving. That's pretty intense right there. Like, so he's quoting 3 high-ranking industry sources saying that Yormark is going to be successful in luring at least some combination of the 4 corner schools, and then said some went farther, speculating the Pac-12 was a couple weeks away from dissolving. There is a quote here from a source that says, quote, the dam is breaking, in a sense, as is confidence in the Pac-12 getting a new media rights deal that will keep the 10 schools together. You combine that with a comment that Dodd put in that was his own commentary that said it feels like there's an inevitability to it all this week at the Big 12 tournament. You know, I mean, that's some editorializing that I think even goes further than I would go. I certainly don't feel like there's an inevitability to it. But I just think the possibility is certainly out there. So again, I will levy a little bit of criticism against that. And as far as 3 high-ranking industry sources, to me that feels again like that it's speculation. I mean, he's quoting sources who are speculating about what they think might happen. There's some value in that, but I think like anybody looking at the situation right now, based on the information we have, would likely lean towards yeah, there's a definite chance here that something happens. Now, these sources are going a little bit further and saying they think he will be successful, and that 3 sources are being quoted here. But I don't know, 3 out of how many in the industry? We don't really know. I think that is a little bit muddy. That is a little bit muddy. But to me, there's been enough smoke on at least there being some level of contact between the 2 sides. I believe that there is some level of contact between the 2 sides, as every school has to do their due diligence. I also firmly believe it only takes one to really start this whole thing, and I think Arizona is definitely somebody that would be listening in all this. So Canzano can say Colorado's athletic director is on record saying it's not, and the Utah ID can tweet whatever the hell he wants. I think Arizona would be the linchpin here, and you'd have a real hard time convincing me that Arizona has not had any level of conversation. Same with Arizona State. Honestly, when you have their athletic director publicly saying it's been really frustrating, like the comments that he gave speaks to me like somebody that knows he's got to be ready for his school. I'm sure there's been some level of conversation to at least make sure that they have options. That is the most significant piece of what Dodd had to say. There's a little bit here on Oregon and Washington. Future of the Ducks and Huskies as members of the Pac-12 may be tied to Big 12 outgoing commissioner Kevin Warren. There are indications at least one Big 10 media rights holder won't engage in expansion talks until Warren officially leaves on April 17th. The belief is there will be clarity about the Pac-12's future long before April 17th. What will happen to Oregon and Washington if they're in sort of a purgatory waiting their conference fate? Nothing really crazy there. I will say the belief is there will be clarity long before April 17th. We'll see. We're pushing 30 days now since the Pac-12's unity statement that said they were they looked forward to getting something figured out in the very near future, and we're pushing a month. We're pushing a month on that right now. So the clock is moving very slowly on Pac-12 time right now. We talk about John Standard Time being slow and late. What about Pac-12 Standard Time right now? Things are not great there. There's a nugget in here about Pac-12 CEOs being authorized to add as many as 4 expansion teams, but it says in here, one industry source notes the move may not be about expansion, but rather backfilling the league should the Pac-12 lose those 4 corner schools, which this goes back to Colorado State, which was reported by even Canzano himself. There is no way that Colorado State is a part of some expansion plan that doesn't include losing Colorado. So yes, I think that probably has some legitimacy to it. I know I have a bunch of donations to get to for you guys. I will get there in just a moment. The final bit here is about the Big 12 jumping in front of the Pac-12 in line there. Says there have been recent rumblings that the Pac-12 could have received the same deal the Big 12 did in October, $31.66 million per team, had it acted more aggressively in renewing its media rights. that probably would have solidified the league for years. However, Yormark jumped in front of the Big 12 with an October deal that was at first criticized for being below market value. So I guess the nugget out of that is that there is speculation that the Pac 12 could have had the same deal that the Big 12 signed had they actually acted quickly. I will stick up a little bit for Kliavkov Cobb in there and say, like, what Wilner outlined at one point in time when we talked about this is that would have been a tough sell at the time, knowing what we knew then. But Yormark clearly had the foresight and connections, somebody who clue him in on what might be coming with ESPN. And some of these places trying to cut back, the streamers having to cut back a little bit. He had the foresight to go in and just jump in and get the stability knocked out with all of that. So he moved swiftly, got what he needed to get done. But it probably would have been a tough sell for Kliavkov Cobb to do that at the time. So that's the main things that you need to know from the Dodd article that has really ruffled some feathers here. Michael, what's up, Michael? I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here, Michael. If you want to donate, click the $ below the chat box, by the way, where it says say something. That is how you get your question or comment on the chat, pins it up at the top for me, guarantees that it gets on. That is the one way to do so and support the channel. Michael says, thoughts on Pitt, Virginia Tech, NC State, and Miami when the ACC fractures. Miami's going to have a home at the big boy table. I'm pretty confident in that. Good academics to go along with a big brand and a football program that, maybe like 3 decades removed from legitimate relevancy, but still has a lot of appeal because of that. So Miami will land somewhere. Pitt, Virginia Tech, NC State. Like I think that's Big 12 level there. And if we're projecting way out into the future and you're trying to be the best of the rest league and the one that's going to still be around, those are the kinds of schools you'd be scooping up. And so is there some logic and value in like, hey, maybe you only take 2 this round out of the Pac-12 and you kind of wait for those schools to come back around? I can understand the logic in that. I definitely can. So yeah, I think those would be good, like long-term Big 12 candidates there. DZ Low 785. What's up, DZ Low? Appreciate you being here. Thank you. First donation, first super chat. I appreciate that a lot. DZ Low, if you could handpick 2 Pac-12 schools, who and why? Arizona to me is number 1. I think from like that flirtation has been there for a while. They have great basketball. Yormark, I love the idea where he's thinking about pulling and separating the basketball media rights from football, packaging those differently and trying to basically make more money by splitting them and doing them separately. Arizona could be a huge help in that. And then I think culturally it's a better fit than a lot of those. After that, but probably Arizona and Arizona State. Like, I think that's what I would say if I'm taking, well, I guess I should backtrack. If we're talking about like realistic options from the Pac-12, if I could handpick 2, I would take Oregon and Washington. But like, I don't think anybody feels like that's an inevitability or something that's overly likely. Is it possible? Sure. Outside chance if the Pac-12 really is going to explode and there is no other better option for those 2. But I think they would fight like hell to not have that be what's going on there. So out of the realistic options, like out of the 4 corners, I would take Arizona and Arizona State. Get that rivalry. Once again, rivalries matter. Get that rivalry. You can say what you will about Colorado and Dion. I don't think that's going to be a long-term marriage one way or the other. Either spectacularly implodes or he has a lot of success. Probably more likely has a lot of success, and then he's going to take a bigger job. And Colorado has just been if you want to laugh, or maybe you cry, depending on how much empathy you have for our friends in Boulder, go look at the last 20 years of Colorado football on Wikipedia and what it has been. I mean, calling it a dumpster fire is an embarrassment to dumpster fires. Colorado football from the last 20 years, calling that a dumpster fire is not fair to dumpster fires because it has been that bad. So, well, Colorado, there is some nostalgia for me as a Big 12 fan in it, and I wouldn't be really opposed to bringing them on. If you gave me my top 2, I would take Arizona and Arizona State. MJ Allen, what's up, MJ Allen? MJ Allen 77, appreciate the support, my friend. MJ Allen says, what happened to Raider Nation hating Coach Beard, saying Mark Adams is way better and now begging for the woman beater to come back? Keep it classy outside of the tournament tech. Well, the saga of Chris Beard and Mark Adams has been a whirlwind. I mean, you had both of those guys on the same bench there at Texas Tech not that long ago. Both of those guys on the same bench in a national championship game, leading a national championship game late in the second half. Pretty wild, everything that has transpired there. The Mark Adams story obviously did not end well at all with Texas Tech this year and the way things went down. And now Tech, it was reported by John Rothstein, was in the Rick Pitino sweepstakes, which is very interesting. Think about all the coaching talent in the Big 12. If they were to add Pitino, who certainly has flaws and issues, and there would be controversy around that, rightfully so. I get it. But that would be pretty fascinating. Look, if I'm being honest, I mean, I Tech fans, I love you. I was just telling someone in my DMs earlier today, like I love the Tech fan base. And we were talking back and forth about how Tech and K-State are similar, and we both kind of root for each other and like each other. Love them a lot. Tech did punk Texas last year, like absolutely punked Chris Beard the year after he left. Chris Beard did not beat Texas Tech. That is accurate. However, if I were a Texas fan, it is come back around. Like, it is your turn now to brag. Yes, Beard is gone, and there was plenty of controversy with Beard, but you guys just won the league. You look like a legitimate Final Four contender. And Mark Adams, who famously did not get on the plane, flamed out. Sounds like there was a lot of drama, maybe letting that ego get a little bit too big, and some other things. I shouldn't comment too much on that because I don't even really specifically know the details of all the Tech rumors there. But a lot of things feels like off the court happened with Mark Adams, and things did not work out well there. So I would say Texas, you do deserve a victory lap, just like Tech deserved one last year for going and winning both of those games and destroying the home court advantage of Texas with the ticket thing last year, which was wonderful. To the victor go the spoils, and this year you guys are the victor, Texas. So I will grant you that, MJ Allen. I will grant you that. Scrolling back up here, guys. Lost my place. Sorry, boy. We got a lot of these to get caught up on. Michael, what's up, Michael? Michael says Holy War isn't as valuable as keeping a good culture. That's an interesting thing to bring up. We were talking about the Utah discussion earlier, them in the Big 12 in a hypothetical scenario here, which once again, I think you'd literally have to drag them by gunpoint to the Big 12. But, I guess like if you did, yeah, the conversation would be like, all right, are you going to get an actual like invested Utah? Are they going to be pouty? Are they going to be a problem? Yeah, you would have to take that into consideration. I would just say, I think the only situation where Utah comes is where like they literally have no other choice. And at that point, they probably wouldn't have much other choice but to just fall in line. Maybe if the idea and the thought here is like they're going to have such a big brand, or think that they have such a big brand at that point that they can kind of bully people around like Texas. But I think then you'd have the leverage just to be like, look, we don't have to deal with you. We'll kick you to the curb. You can go play in the Mountain West because the Big Ten and the SEC are not taking you. So have fun. I think there's probably, I think the only real scenario where they would ever end up in the Big 12 would be one where they're probably just leveraged into having to kind of suck it up and deal. But I understand the point. I would understand the concern there for sure. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? Matthew, thank you for the support. Matthew Nichols in the house tonight. He says, bro thinks Tech fans want Benedict Beard back. I'm not sure who you're referencing there because it certainly isn't me. I don't think that that's what's going to happen. It sounds like Chris Beard to Ole Miss may be a thing. I have not checked on that in a couple days, but saw that coming across my timeline the other day. It feels like that is, especially with the way Mark Adams went out and how much bad blood, it just feels like bridges were burned there, right? I don't think there's any going back to Chris Beard. As much as like that would make sense to some people to say like that should happen, it feels like, I mean, God, it looked like a mob scene when Texas was trying to come in just for their shoot around last year in Lubbock for that first game back. Like, it looked like something out of like World War III. Like that, I don't think that's going to work out on either side there, especially when you just had a coach leave in controversy and everything that just happened with Beard. Like, I don't think that's a route that you can travel down. Big 12 plus in the house. What's up, Big 12 plus? Says, John, your thoughts on this as a new name and conference logo? Oh, a new name and logo. Okay. Big 12 plus, your thoughts on this as a new name and logo? Well, it's a little tough for me to see. Okay, so it looks like the logo is just like the Big 12 logo with like a little plus in between the two Roman numeral like eyes or whatever. I don't know what they would technically be called. My thoughts on that as a new name. I like the creativity. I really do. The only thing with that is I feel like ESPN Plus already has there's so much negative connotation going on with that for Big 12 fans. Like they just don't like that calling the conference Big 12 plus, people will probably just be like, I don't know. I hate ESPN Plus. I don't like that association there, but might be something to think about if this conference really is going to expand and be coast to coast like Yormark seemingly wants it to be. I don't know. At some point, do you have to change the name, or is there enough brand value and all of that to keep it? I don't know. I don't know. That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. I will just say this, Big 12 Plus. I appreciate the creativity for sure. No matter whether or not I think that could be viable or not, I definitely appreciate the creativity there. Shorts all year. What's up, Shorts all year? Shorts all year says Utah fans do what they accuse BYU of. I just think Utah fans do whatever sucks. That's what I would say about Utah fans. Whatever sucks that you can think of out there, like whatever terrible garbage take that you think could be thrown out there, Utah fans will do it. However entitled you can act about a program that like a decade or a decade and a half ago was in the Mountain West, that would be them. Whatever you think, like the most entitled way you could act after being rescued from obscurity by the Pac-12 not that long ago, that is how they would act. However cocky you think someone could act from losing the Rose Bowl 2 years in a row, that would be how they act. In fact, the latest one that I was interacting with was pointing, hey, here's a picture of what Big 12 fans look like when I tell them the Pac-12 had a better year last year. Excuse me, sir. Better year last year. The biggest story in the Pac-12 was USC. Utah lost the Rose Bowl to a mediocre Penn State team, and the Big 12 won a college football playoff game by beating the Big 10 champ. It's the second year in a row that the Big 12 has had. The new Big 12 has had a team in the college football playoff, and they just won a game. The Pac-12 has not won a college football playoff game in a decade. By the time they kick off the next playoff, it will have been a decade since Oregon won a game in the college football playoff for that league. So spare me with the better year nonsense. By the way, we also had something come across Twitter. It was an article from David Ubben in The Athletic, actually, that pointed out of the top 30 most watched teams in college football last year, 4 were from the Big 12. 1, Oregon, was from the Pac-12. It was Baylor, Oklahoma State, K-State, and TCU that were the 4 from the Big 12. So spare me any of that. Spare me any of that. That's a really dumb comment, and of course, it came from a Utah fan. Cat in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. What's up, my friend? Appreciate you as always. Thank you for being here. Cat fan in Huskerland says, or should I say, a.k.a. Big 12 Karen. Yes, fellow Big 12 Karen, all hail. All hail, Big 12 Overlord Karen. All hail, Karen. Thank you for my paycheck. Thank you for allowing me to put food on my table tonight. It seems that the trucks in the truck stock conference have outmaneuvered the Pac-12 Teslas. Go Cats. Well, I mean, Teslas are just like exploding, right? I don't know. They probably tried to put those things on auto drive and it just slammed into an old woman at a crosswalk or something. Go Cats. Next Sunday, I will be a Cat fan in Campeche Land. I don't. You have stumped me with that one. I don't know what Campeche Land is. I'm looking it up. Relatively flat area of Mexico. Okay, Mexico. Didn't know that. Clearly, I'm not taking exotic vacations. You are more financially viable than me, Daniel. Congratulations for knowing your towns in Mexico. But enjoy your vacation, my friend. Enjoy your vacation. I appreciate the support as always. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Boom to the Sooner says, if Oregon and Washington want a bigger cut from the Pac-12, shouldn't that make it easier to grab up the other Pac-12 schools? Possibly. I mean, that to me, it just comes down to like the hard part for the Pac-12 here is going to be not only the deal, but it's the combination. It's threading the needle of getting a deal that people are happy enough with to then sign a grant of rights. And that'll be the issue with Oregon and Washington. Can you get them to sign a grant of rights? I don't know. I have not seen a lot of reporting really about unequal revenue sharing in the Pac-12. I wouldn't say there's been enough smoke right now to make me think that that's like something that would legitimately happen. Maybe it would be. Maybe Oregon and Washington at the final hour would put their foot down enough to say that that needs to happen, especially after watching, like taking cues basically from the ACC and Florida State and Clemson and North Carolina now really suggesting that. Maybe they do. But it really, to me, is, I think that's oversimplifying it a little bit. I think it's just the deal is there are so many moving parts there. Can you get a grant of rights? Can you get a TV deal that satisfies everybody? Is there enough visibility and is there enough money? And that's the whole issue that's going to make it easier to take the schools here. So it probably, it's a piece of the pie. It's a piece of the pie that's going on right now with all of that. David, what's up, David? David, appreciate you chiming in again. David, I know a BYU fan here. He says, keep in mind the administrations at BYU and Utah are close and have each other on speed dial. Harlan talks with Homo often, and BYU is the point of contact for that. Okay, so maybe that's it. Maybe that's it then. When we're talking about like the four corner schools and having contact, maybe some of that is Utah going through BYU. That's interesting there, and I appreciate the insight there. BYU fans have done a really good job like filling me in on some of the elements of the rivalry there. I feel like I have a better understanding of where the Utah stuff is really coming from, thanks to you guys. So I do appreciate that. And I'm not even saying because they're all coming in there saying, "Oh, Utah fans suck." No, I mean like understanding that it's about Utah going through the climb to get to a conference. Then all of a sudden they had more stability than BYU did, and you can hold that over your rival. All of that sort of thing. Mark, what's up, Mark? Mark Lewis, appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here. Mark says, I'm happy to get on the hashtag Big 12 Karen bandwagon. The Holy War would bring primetime nationwide audience. It would bring a lot to the Big 12. I'll be honest, like I don't like want to reward Utah fans in any way, but yes, like being able to have that rivalry. I am much more interested in that rivalry now than I ever was before. I will say that. And this is what is great about college sports and what can be great about these. Like needing to create new rivalries in a new league when you're losing teams, like Texas A&M. Obviously, you've lost that rivalry from the conference long ago. Replacing it with something like that is cool. And watching those things develop in a new conference would be very cool. I will give you that. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel says, I thank you for the support, my friend. Says, John, it's TCU Dan, not K-State Dan. If Utah ends up in the Big 12, we'll have a school everyone hates for the first time since A&M left. Hashtag Mountain Aggies. Mountain Aggies is kind of funny. If Utah ends up in the Big 12, we'll have a school everyone hates for the first time since A&M left. I didn't like what's weird about A&M is that I feel like I hate them much more after they left because they got into the SEC and that ego expanded tenfold. They started adding non-existent championships right to their walls at Kyle Field to overcompensate a little bit. Like they got too big for their britches after they left. There was a time where I really kind of liked Texas A&M in the Big 12. I didn't like what they did to K-State in 1998, obviously. But I didn't totally hate them. But you're right. Like the way Utah has acted about all of this. Yes, it would be a very weird kind of shotgun marriage if that were to ever go down. I definitely understand what you're getting at there. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, Texas, I don't think anybody likes Texas right now. Did anybody really like Nebraska when they were still around in the league? There have been teams that I feel like were fairly universally hated. But I get the point that you're making for sure about Utah, and that is true. That is definitely true. Browns and Beers. What's up, Browns and Beers? Thank you for being here, my friend. Browns and Beers says, congrats to all who made it to the tournament within the conference. I like a lot of what Brett did with the tournament in KC. Definitely looking like a destination event, picking KSU to go far. Hey, thank you, Browns and Beers. Yes, congratulations to all 7 teams in the Big 12 and getting in. I gave you this take a little bit earlier, but I mean, I think the Big 12 got disrespected a little bit. Look, I hate Kansas as much as the next guy. And there are no tears being shed from me that more Kansas fans are going to have to make a longer commute from Johnson County Community College at College in Quivira in Overland Park, Kansas. Instead of going to Sprint Center, they'll have to go to Las Vegas if they make it to that regional. No tears shed from me on that front. However, I do think it's pretty ridiculous that they not only didn't get the number 1 overall seed, but then they didn't get the Midwest region because Houston passed them, which means that Kansas doesn't get Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games at T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, where we just had the Big 12 tournament. That's rough. I mean, I think Kansas should have been the number 1 overall seed and had the Midwest probably. Like unbelievable resume. They have about 75 quad 1 wins, and the committee's reasoning basically being like, well, they got blown out when they lost too much. I mean, like, okay, put Houston through the ringer of have Houston play TCU a couple times and wait for the time TCU gets red hot and see what happens to Houston. I thought that was just terrible. Like Houston didn't play nearly as many quad 1 games. Bad reasoning. Kansas got kind of screwed. Oklahoma State, you've already heard my thoughts there. They got screwed. Like Nevada and Arizona State getting in. Don't love that ahead of Oklahoma State. Even like Iowa State as a 6. Now they get the little kiss that if they do win their first 2 games, they would then be coming to play with a ton of fans in Kansas City. So they have that out there for them. But yeah, I thought that Texas, I think deserved a 1 seed and they didn't get that. So I thought that the committee slighted the Big 12 a little bit with all of that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff at play there. Like, can West Virginia, if they beat Maryland in that game, can they give Alabama a run for their money? That will be really interesting. We could get TCU Gonzaga in a 3-6 game in the second round. Would love that. Texas, speaking of Texas and A&M, that can be a 2-7 game with them being matched up in the same pod there. So there is a lot. As far as K-State's draw, I see you picking K-State to go far. I like that. Love hearing that. The thing that's scary to me is Kentucky, preseason top 5 team that's kind of underachieved this year. K-State back in 2014 got Kentucky in an 8-9 game. That happened to be a Kentucky team that went to the Final Four because they just kind of, I mean, Cal feels like has a hard time keeping these guys like focused during the regular season, but you know that they're going to turn it on in the tournament. Well, you don't. But logic would tell you they may turn it on in the tournament because the lights are on. And even if they've had a dysfunctional year, this is the time to really shine. That would be the narrative that worries me about Kentucky. Like all of a sudden they're going to turn it on and play a lot better and be more focused because now is the time to be focused. I think Montana State matches up fairly well. They're not a great 3-point shooting team, which I think of mid-majors being trouble when they're a great 3-point shooting team. They get really hot. Doesn't mean that they can't in the game. They also got just blasted by Texas Tech last year in the first round. So I feel okay about that, but I think it would be a really tough matchup in the second round with Kentucky for K-State there. Scrolling back down. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Boom to the Sooner says, how crazy would college football be right now if the ACC's TV contract had expired now rather than way later? Yeah, it'd be, I mean, feel like the transfer portal in college football or college basketball right now if you had that going on, because then it would be like the SEC really would have to strike while the iron's hot. The Big Ten probably trying to get in that game too, maybe for like Virginia, North Carolina, maybe Miami, and then Clemson, Florida State probably going to the SEC. There would be a ton of that going on right now. I mean, you're seeing what's going on anyway at the moment. The ACC schools are already trying to maneuver themselves there, and we're 13 years out from that media rights deal being up. So, yeah, it would be much more wild. I mean, as wild as all this seems right now, the kind of standoff that we have between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, there would be even more going on there. Still trying to catch up here. Lively chat here tonight, folks. Lively chat, and I appreciate that. If you want to donate and get something in, this is about your 5 to 10 minute warning here. 5 to 10 minute warning. Click the $ below the chat box where it says say something if you want to hop in, get your question or comment on the chat tonight. Browns and Beer says, with all due respect to Lubbock and Tech fans, genuinely hoping someone in this conference botches a basketball coaching hire. Funny you say that. Like that is really like kind of the reality. When I saw Pitino, like that Tech was going to be involved for Pitino, understanding that Georgetown and St. John's are open and like those seem to make a lot more sense in terms of fit for Pitino. I was like, God, like, you know, controversy aside and all of that, like if you have Rick Pitino, like the coaching talent, Rick Pitino in this conference at Texas Tech, a place with a rabid fan base and a lot of money to throw at the deal, like you're adding that into the mix with everything else we already have in the Big 12. Like, damn, man, like there's just, it's ridiculous. They're going to be adding Houston, like maybe Arizona, maybe Gonzaga. Like this league is just obscenely difficult. So there's a part of me that was like that. Yeah. Like we need somebody to screw up something in basketball here at some point. Or else it's just going to, I don't know, man. The conference champion is going to be 10-8 every single year. R Web, laughing at R Web, popping it here. R Web, back-to-back Rose Bowl runner-ups, baby. Hashtag Big 12 Karen. Yeah, thank you for that, R Web. Thank you for reminding everybody that Utah lost to an incredibly mediocre Penn State team this year in said Rose Bowl. DZ Low 785 says jokes on Daniel. Everyone already hates Iowa State. I don't think that's true. I mean, clearly, like, look, we do. DZ, I see the 785 DZ Low. So I assume you're a cat. We definitely do not like Iowa State, but you know, I feel like a lot of people, I feel like Iowa State's kind of harmless, right? I mean, you know, never a serious threat to win the Big 12 in football. So, you know, a little harmless to a lot of folks. So there's not quite the hatred there because they just view them as much more harmless. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? It says weird for me to watch Bama get the 1 seed knowing the worst team in the Big 12 beat them by almost 30 points. That is one of the craziest results of the entire season. After watching Bama, it's like, how did Oklahoma not only beat them, but beat them by 30? Like almost 30 anyway. It was like 24 or something. Just cleaned their clock in Norman when they played in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. That is one of the more puzzling and funny, frankly, results of the entire college basketball season. Okay. Boy, we did not cover a lot of this in detail. Just try to run through all this before the finish line. Mark Harlan, the athletic director at Utah, I think I kind of referenced this. He took the Dennis Dodd article that was quoted out there, or that was tweeted out there by Dodd, and quote tweeted it and said, "Give me a break." That was his official statement about Dennis Dodd's article, which I understand. Again, I feel like Dodd opened himself up to some of that. The Paul McCartney comment saying it feels like there's an inevitability to the Pac-12 imploding. That is even a little bit strong for me. A little bit strong for me. Let's jump into the Big 12 Karen thing here. This is what John Canzano wrote. So we've been discussing this, and once again, obligatory, all hail Overlord Karen. All hail Overlord Karen. Thank you for putting a roof over my head. But Karen is from Endeavor, and Utah fans have really been pushing this, obviously, as we've heard from BYU fans. This is the first part of the latest subscriber article from John Canzano, who seems to be playing into this. He says, "I don't know how much Endeavor is charging the Big 12 Conference, but industry insiders expect the consulting bill will be a doozy. Last September, Brett Yormark's conference hired WME Sports and IMG Media, two Endeavor-owned companies, to help with media strategy, advice, and negotiations. Karen Brodkin, love of my life, Karen Brodkin, the co-head of these two entities, said in a news release at the time, quote, 'We are proud to bring the full power of the Endeavor Network to bear for the Big 12. The full power has become a topic of discussion in the Pac-12 footprint as the conference continues to seek a media rights deal and consider expansion. The 10 remaining Pac-12 presidents and chancellors insist they're committed to sticking together. I'm told they're making good progress behind the scenes, but they're doing so amid a repetitive cascade of negative media reports, including a few that continue to crow about the imminent demise of the Pac-12. It has me thinking a lot lately about how the media narrative is shaped, who plants the stories, whose agendas are being served by what we read, and how much of what is reported should we trust. George Kliavkov has waved off the negative reports as orchestrated nonsense. On more than one occasion, the commissioner publicly talked about leaks and disparaging reports as, quote, an attempt to destabilize the conference. I reached out to Endeavor this week and requested an interview with Brodkin. I did not receive a reply. Good stuff, Karen. Good stuff. Keep turning down those interview requests, Karen. Of course, do whatever you want to do because all hail Overlord Karen. Her name keeps coming up in my conversations with Pac-12 sources. I'd like to talk with her, learn more about her philosophy, and ask what she sees in the ecosystem of college athletics. Brodkin has a solid reputation. Those who have worked closely with her say she's smart and shrewd. Apparently, the Pac-12 presidents and chancellors thought so too. Brodkin emerged as a Pac-12 commissioner candidate after the conference decided not to renew Larry Scott's contract in early 2021. How about that? Our Overlord Karen, who provides me with an apartment and a paycheck and food and all of those things, could have been the commissioner of the Pac-12. She could have been handing out the Altimore paychecks and all of that. That could have been happening, but instead, that is not what is happening. And she is, according to everybody, all Utah fans, working to coerce everybody against the Pac-12 here. But what is interesting about that, Bob Thompson quote tweeted one of these hashtag Big 12 Karen folks from Pac-12 country and said, Bob Thompson, again, former head of Fox Sports, right? A guy who negotiates with all of these, knows everybody that would be involved here and how these negotiations work. Bob Thompson says, I think you all are going down the wrong rabbit hole on this Endeavor/Big 12 misinformation campaign theory. It is not WMG or WME/IMG's MO. Worked with them for years. Now, with that being said, there are many others who do this on a daily basis. So he is saying Big 12 Overlord Karen is not who you need to go after. So I don't know. Canzano loved up Bob Thompson a lot. That was his industry source very early on. He has quoted him multiple times in stories, seems to very much respect him. He is out here saying, you're barking up the wrong tree, John. You're barking up the wrong tree with this Karen thing. But I digress. Still seems to have a lot of legs in the Pac-12 community right now. And boy, for right now, the getting's good. The getting's good with all the money funneling into my slush fund from Big 12 Karen. So thank you, Big 12 Karen, as always. And we're going to get out of here on Alan's comment. Alan, appreciate you being here. Thank you for your congratulations. As Alan says, John, congrats to your Cats. Hoping to see an all truck stop U Final Four. KU, Baylor, Texas, and K-State. Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, Allen. That would be epic and amazing. I would love it. I would love it. That would be great for good old Good old Truck Stop U conference. Truck Stop U taking over the Final Four. All right. I think that's going to do it for me. I'm pretty talked out here after doing a live podcast about K-State's draw and then into this. So I'm going to have to hop on out of here. Oh, I see Travis. Travis says chances of an all Big 12 Final Four. Brett Yormark cashed that in. I mean, look, the chances are low, but I would love to see it. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how the Big 12 teams do this year, because my theory would be just getting away from everybody is going to be the greatest thing to happen to a lot of these squads, because everybody's scouted so much and there are no nights off, and we all know how this league went. I am very hopeful and optimistic that it's going to be a great tourney for the Big 12. But the key will be getting teams to that second weekend, right? That's how you're going to measure success here, getting teams to the second weekend. Please spread the word about the channel, friends, family, social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it might be. Let them know, word of mouth, all those different things about this great community that we have here that's now over 16,000 strong subscribers on the YouTube channel. You can support the channel on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4, if you're catching this after the fact. Please, please, please make sure you like the video if you haven't yet. I appreciate all of that. Leave a comment. Anything like that really helps me, and it's totally free. And hit me up on Twitter at @JLKurtz. Getting a little tougher to be responsive in the DMs these days. I'm hearing from a lot of people, but I will try to get there if you do have something for me in the Twitter DMs. I think that's pretty much all I've got. I will talk to you guys soon. I got to go. If you'll excuse me, I'm getting a phone call from Karen. I actually have to go talk to Karen right now and get my latest marching orders for the upcoming week. So once I get those, you guys will hear from me again on the channel, and we will move forward from there. Take care. I will talk to you guys soon.